You've heard from Della about a lot of the things that are in a 504 plan. But what are some of the things that we as parents are concerned about that are not necessarily always medical that also need to be in a 504 plan? Like, is my child allowed to test their blood sugars or check their blood sugars in the classroom? How do we make that work? If there's an upcoming class trip, do I have to go? Does the school nurse go? It's very important to understand that with every child, there's a different 504 plan in place. What you have to decide as parents is what's important to us, what's important that my child gets the education that they want and gets to partake in all the great school activities without getting stopped because of their diabetes. And that's what this portion is to talk about. What is it that you need to know when you go into your 504 plan? So you go over your child's school day. It's best just to sit down, talk with them, see what they go through the day, and then ask yourself at almost every single comment, how will this impact my child's diabetes? And could this, by taking care of their diabetes management, stop my child from partaking in school activities? So the best thing to do is to go through, talk with your child, talk with your teachers. And by the way, it shouldn't just be you and your child, and they should all be part of this process. It's not an us versus them, because they know things that you may not know about gym class, about going on class trips. So the idea of the 504 plan that most concerns parents are, what can we do to make my child's day a little smoother and a little bit better? Maybe some things the school has not thought about. Let's take a look at if there's a 504 plan in place where you've talked about accommodations for your child, but oops, today there's a substitute. Well, what does that mean? What does that mean for your child? Well, it should already be in place in your 504 plan that when a substitute teacher comes in, they will look at the 504 plan so they are made aware of it. This is about making everybody aware of what is best for your child. So that's one of the things to consider, among many things about how to make a 504 plan work and how to make it better. What happens with a substitute teacher? What happens on a class trip? What happens on a class trip if the school nurse can't go or you don't have a school nurse? Well, the law states that the school needs to come up with accommodations for your child to be allowed to go on that class trip. And it may be simple. It may be that you're able to go. But if everybody in your family works and nobody can go with your child, the school must make accommodations for that. And that's what this kind of thing will happen in a 504 plan. If I or anyone in my family cannot accompany my child to help them with their diabetes, then the school states that X, Y, Z will happen so my child does not miss out on these wonderful class trips. Another thing that happens a lot that people don't think about, and that's a key here. The biggest thing about the 504 plans is not necessarily to say that common sense is the only thing that takes over. Of course, it's a big part of it. But if you have it written, then it's a manual. It helps us get to the point and we can look at it and say, this is what's needed. Lockdown. In today's world, it's a big thing. Well, what happens if there's a lockdown right before lunch when your child is about to check their blood sugar and then take insulin based on what they're about to eat? Let's say they have done their bolus because they know they're about to eat, and then 10 minutes later they're going to have food in them. Bam, lockdown happens. Well, what happens? Well, chances are the child will have something with them if they go low, but somebody needs to be aware that at least when the lockdown's over, that child gets to eat right away. So maybe that means they can go right to the front of the line in the cafeteria. Maybe it means that they can have something with them at all times. This is all part of the 504 plan also. Another thing to think of is testing. You know, there's enough stress on a child about what happens during test time. Not only tests in school, but state mandated tests, state for colleges, all these tests. Your child has a right, anytime they take a test, to make sure there are accommodations for them while they take the test. That can be something as simple as having food and drink if their blood glucose is low, that they can stop, check their blood sugar. You know what a lot of parents do, we used to do this with Caitlin and Rob, is that when they took a test in school, they would check their blood sugar right before they took the test and they would write it in the upper right-hand corner. So there was no question. So if she was a normal blood sugar and the test went great or whatever, then that's fine. But then this way, if a normal student who has a normal kind of grade average And you can be flexible with this, but all of a sudden, a test, they tank. Well, the blood sugar says she was 75 when she went into the test and was probably going down even lower. So this just allows them to be allowed to take a test over again, and it helps the parent and the teacher say, look, we're working together. I'm not trying to pull one over on you. I'm not going to just say, look, my kid got a 40, so they get to take the test over. However, if their blood sugar affected that test, the child has every single right to be allowed to take that test over again. And it also comes in with absences in school. You cannot get penalized if your child is absent a day, if they say you're only to be missed a certain amount of days, but those days' absence are due to something happening at home with their blood sugars that you need to take them home, you need to take them to the doctors. They cannot be punished, for lack of a better phrase. They can't be punished for doing something to take care of their blood sugars that makes them absent from school. That needs to be in a 504 plan also. Very important on the state test too. Believe it or not, if your child tanks a test or somehow or other they totally go off the charts with their blood sugars, state has to allow them to take the test again. And you have to let them stop. You know, when your child has a low blood sugar, and you're taking a test, well, you don't just take some cake gel or some glucose tablets and all of a sudden, bam, you're ready to take the test again. It's going to take time. Now, what about in a time test? Very important. 30 minutes to take a test. Well, that's fine. If you start and 6 minutes in, they have a low blood sugar and they have to treat it for 20 minutes, well, then they still have only 6 minutes gone when they come back. And that's what's important, and it helps children to take the test. It's really just to allow people to have what every other child has who doesn't have diabetes. And that's the thing to remember through all of this. It's not necessarily common sense in the moment. It's good to have that roadmap, and the roadmap is the 504 plan. When it's written, you can point to it and say, here's what we've already discussed.